everyone within 10 miles of here has to know where this is. I've been blessed in so many ways, so many times.
If you didn't have the mascot, you weren't going to be successful, but to do it the second time around.
If you're going to be spectacularly successful, you have to have differentiators. You can't replicate your competitor.
The difference between big success is it can be a fine line. One of the things you guys were known for was that guerrilla marketing tactic for Liberty Tax and dressing up in the Statue of Liberty. Where did that idea come from? Who came up with that idea? Because that turned out to be one of the most successful ways that you guys attracted attention, right?
Yeah, exactly. When we first started Liberty Tax in 2000, because I had sold the public company, I was still kind of infamous or famous on Wall Street. So we go to Wall Street every year and talk to investors and keep my contacts alive. When I first started going out and talking about Liberty Tax, people said, Liberty, who's that? They heard of Jackson Hewitt, but they never heard of Liberty. Within about 3 or 4 years, every time I mentioned Liberty Tax, oh, you're the ones with the dancer in front. You're the one with the costume figure. And so, yeah, I read a book just before I left Jackson Hewitt called Guerrilla Marketing. And it was a great testament of why use guerrilla marketing and how effective it is. And actually, the cost per customer when you use guerrilla marketing is far less than when you use traditional TV or radio or back then newspaper or direct mail. Of course, there was no internet when that book was written in the early 90s. And the cost is much less expensive. And so I fell in love with guerrilla marketing just a year before the company was sold. And we invented little donut boxes that said Jackson Hewitt on it. And we would buy donuts, like 3 or I forget how many donuts it held, like 3 to 5, and we deliver them business to business at Jackson Hewitt. But we never had a Jackson Hewitt costume because what would that look like? I mean, it wouldn't be good to have a picture of me, right? So what was a Jackson Hewitt costume look like? So what happened, I've been blessed in so many ways, so many times. The way we invented the name Liberty Tax is we had, remember I left with For My People, we had 100 names of all kinds of different companies. I couldn't use Hewitt anymore because of my non-compete and the agreement I had signed, but we were looking for a name and we couldn't find one. And then I was driving down West Sahara Boulevard in Las Vegas, and there's this 50-foot replica of the Statue of Liberty in front of this little Liberty shopping center. And I said to myself, wow, everyone within 10 miles of here has to know where this is. And I bet you parents are bringing their little children and taking their picture in front of the Statue of Liberty. I mean, you're in Vegas, right? And that's 3,000 miles from New York. They may never get to New York, but they're taking their picture. I said, everyone knows where this is. And there were stories like in the guerrilla marketing, like there's a big chicken used to be, I don't know, in Atlanta. I don't know. It was called the Big Chicken. And there was a store with this huge 50-foot chicken head on top of it. And so everyone knew where that was. And of course, I didn't invent costume characters. McDonald's had a Ronald McDonald's, and Burger King had a little king. Wendy's had a little red-haired, wigged girl. Chick-fil-A still has a cow out on occasion. So I didn't invent it. But when we started Liberty, what an easy way to get brand name. I had to go against, I've been competing against H&R Block for 41 years now. And they're a household name. Everyone know. I mean, if you say, tell me the largest tax services in the country, 90% of the people would say H&R Block. How many would say, back when we started Liberty Tax, could say Liberty? No one. So we said, we need to break in. You got to get brand name before you can get a customer make a buying decision, right? If they never heard of you, they're never going to come to you. So first thing you got to do is get brand name. And it's so easy. I mean, Tariq, how many businesses do you pass on the way to work each day? Most people pass by hundreds. And I say to them, how many can you remember? And they say 20 or 12 but if you saw a costume character dancing from January to April in front of on the street, would that be one of the companies that you remember? And everyone unanimously says yes. And so when we started ATAX, my new company, we have an eagle costume. So we have eagle dancers with ATAX signs out in front of our location. And when you pass through America, there aren't typically national brands. There aren't 5 that have costume characters, and certainly not H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's so interesting, and to me it's part of the ingenuity of entrepreneurs. And sometimes the difference, what I've seen, the difference between big success is it can be a fine line sometimes, where it's just like, it's kind of that one thing. Now, granted, you were already successful in the tax space without a mascot, right? So it's not like someone could say, okay, if you didn't have the mascot, you weren't going to be successful, but to do it the second time around.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it doesn't. I mean, Chick-fil-A and Kentucky Fried Chicken both serve chicken, right? And they both have soda and fries and, all kinds of, or many similar products, but they're a little different. And just like McDonald's is different from Burger King and different from Wendy's. If David had worn the same shield and sword and armor that Goliath wore, there would be no David and Goliath story. He'd be the 189th guy killed by Goliath. So you have to have differentiators. If you're going to be spectacularly successul, you have to have differentiators. You can't replicate your competitor. And it doesn't. And you're right. And I'm 95% of my companies. I've always had the fastest growing tax company, whether it was H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt or Liberty or now ATAX. I've always had the fastest growing, but 95% of the system is the same. It's the 5% differentiators that set us apart and make us the fastest growing.
If you enjoyed this short clip from the podcast, you can check out another short clip right here. Or if you want to watch the full episode of this podcast, you can watch that here. And remember, knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.